Welcome, everyone, to the Masculine Wilderness podcast. I'm your host, Tom Perez. I'm the founder and CEO of Epic Project. This podcast is an ongoing conversation about how men can show up in the world in the best version of themselves, and we cannot do that without leaders like Toni McKinley. Today, she is joining us from the Magdalen House of Austin in the Lone Star State of Texas. Toni, welcome. I'm glad to reconnect with you again. It's been a while, but I'm so glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about the work that you're doing currently with Magdalen House.
Sure. So Magdalen House of Austin is a 2-year long-term residential home for women who've experienced sex trafficking. We follow the model of Thistle Farms in Tennessee, which is where we got our name Magdalen from. Their very first home was called Magdalen. And they, been using this same model for 27 years. And I've done a lot of work around the state of Texas and placing survivors in homes over the years and kind of learning about what works and what not works. And when I learned about Magdalen House and Thistle Farms, it just really kind of fit with what I was forming in my head, which would be a really great program that would work well for survivors to heal in. And so I ended up coming here as community director and working with the women one-on-one and in groups, and then moved up to executive director in 2022 and still trying to keep my foot in the door working directly with survivors. But we take them through 4 phases of our program. It's 2 years. And our goal is that they become self-sufficient, dependent, basically that all of their vulnerabilities are eliminated, that they're strong, they know how to use their voice. Our goal is that they will never be re-exploited or trafficked ever again. And that's really kind of the minimum. We also don't want them involved in domestic violence relationships because a lot of times survivors go from trafficking to domestic violence. And so just really helping them so that when they leave here, they're going to live a relatively happy, stable life that they never thought they could have.
Yeah. What's the capacity in terms of residents at this facility?
Yeah, so we're small. We have a home. It's in a regular neighborhood. A lot of people think we're this like clinical, sterile environment, and we're not. It's just a regular home in a neighborhood to create normalization and help them know and like belong to a community. But we have 6 women in our home. And we bought a home across the street. We own this home that we're in. We bought a home across the street last year that we're currently remodeling. It should be done next month. And we'll have another 6 women in there, which is really exciting because I have over 50 women on our wait list waiting to get in.
That was going to be my next question. So this model, this residential model, you could open up a new home every month for a long time and still maybe not have enough beds. What is that? What does that need? It may not just even in Austin or in Texas, but like that's a huge need, right?
It's a huge need, and it's hard because I just had a woman actually call me today wondering where she is on the wait list. She applied last May of 2024 and she's number 14. The fact that she's still waiting and hasn't found a place tells me that we're not the only ones that are full, right? We're not the only ones with the waiting list. Yeah. And there's not a lot of homes in general in the United States compared to the number of people who are trafficked and who are trying to get out and need help. We're a survivor-led organization, and I think that makes us really appealing to survivors. I'm a survivor myself. And so we really value the voice of survivors and not only of myself, but of the residents who are here, and really want them to use that to tell us like, what are your needs? How can we help you? Instead of being just this cookie cutter program and the same for everyone, right? And just really trying to meet each individual need because everyone's different. All their trafficking experiences are different. And we just want to make sure that this is a safe place for them to grow and learn and get healing.
I had heard estimates over the years about how many beds was usually like the unit of measurement that they used to describe like, okay, we have X number of beds to meet the needs of trafficking survivors. Is that even tracked anymore? Are there any estimates? 'Cause like you said, the number of beds versus the number of victims, there's a great disparity there, but is there any more precision on how big that need is?
I don't think it's really changed much. It worries me. People want to go out and rescue, so to say, or people escape because I'm like, what are you going to do with them? Right. I've got 50 women on my wait list that are couch surfing, that are still vulnerable. I interviewed a girl and talked to her who was living with a John, which I know we don't really call him anymore, a buyer, someone daughter living with him and used him as her reference.
Wow.
Yeah. But they're trying to survive. They're going to do
Yeah.
what they can to stay off the streets because they are dangerous. The streets are very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the need is high. I don't know what the number is. I've lost track of the statistic because it's so overwhelming here. Just trying to help all the women that are on my wait list. I don't want them to know that they're forgotten about, and so I try to hold, meet online, get an online connection with them, and do Zoom meetings with them, and get-togethers online because they're all over the place. If they can even safely access the internet to communicate with me, to try to let them know, like, hey, we haven't forgotten about you. I know you've been on our wait list for a year, but you didn't get lost in the shuffle. You're still here, still connect. It gives us a chance to get to know them and build that rapport before they ever come here, which is important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You mentioned something just a little bit ago that just reminded me of the fact that when a lot of people, obviously you're in the trenches on this every day, but a lot of people that might be aware of the evil of trafficking, sexual exploitation in America or anywhere. And we have this limited view, like we just have to get them away from the trafficker, right?
Yeah.
And once we do that, the problem's solved. Why is that not the case?
That is not the case. Yeah. It's because of trauma. Trauma keeps us stuck in what we know. And what they know is that life of being sold and being controlled, being manipulated. And that's not how they see it. But trauma just prevents them from being able to be independent and do things differently. There's a certain lens that they're looking through. It's called the trauma lens. And it's hard for me to see outside of that to get a good peripheral vision of what different can I do with my life to get away from this, to not be manipulated or tricked or forced or find myself backed in a corner that I don't know how to get out of. And so when they come here, that we focus on that a lot. Communication skills, using their voice. I encourage the women to tell me if they don't like something that I'm doing, if they disagree with something in our program, because if they can question me, who they view as an authority figure who's putting a roof over their head, then that strengthens that neural pathway in their brain to question someone out there who doesn't have their best interests at heart, right? So I want them to practice that. I want them to practice, being curious and not being afraid, and learning that when I ask Toni or another staff member a question, or I don't like something that they're doing, that it's a safe space for me to ask. And that reprograms their brain to know that I'm not always going to get hurt if I stand up for myself, right? So it helps me too, because I'm super codependent for my own issues. And so it helps me get stronger. I was like, I better know what I'm doing. I better be able to explain it well, or I better be able to be flexible and change if I'm wrong, right?
It's fascinating to hear you unpack this, because you obviously have a skilled therapeutic lens and the language to use to describe this, but like you didn't learn all of this about trauma just by going to school.
No.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this isn't just a simple career choice for you.
Yeah.
I could have been in HR at a corporation, or I'm the executive director of Magdalen House. How did this, what was your journey that led to what you're doing now? And then I want to come back to the trauma, because I have a bunch of questions.
Sure. It's interesting because I can think back even down to being a young kid, like in middle school or high school, and just wondering why people behave the way they do. Why do they react that way? What are they feeling inside? What does that feel like to feel that feeling? I was so disconnected with myself because of my own experience of being trafficked as a kid. But I was always curious about, why don't I feel happy? Why can't I feel what you're feeling? Right. So there's always been kind of this inside of me of curiosity of psychology, which I didn't know at the time that's what it was, right? Yeah. And so it wasn't until my world just came crashing down, which was older. I was older in life. It didn't happen right away. I was really good at pulling myself up by the bootstraps and pretending like everything was okay.
Yeah.
But you can only do that for so long, some people longer than others. And I went to counseling because I was falling apart. And when I experienced that healing process, it completely changed my life and opened up doors that I could never understand why I could never get through that door. why I could never get that chance, why I wasn't getting this opportunity. There was blocks that I couldn't see that other people could see, that I just wasn't ready or there or skilled enough, right? And so once I got my own counseling, and then I wanted other women to experience the same thing as me. And I happened at that time to be very lucky. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't have to work. And there was no way I could have worked and gone and done the therapy that I did. It was overwhelming and so difficult to operate your everyday life when, you're all this trauma is coming out. But as I got through that, I wanted to help other women. And so I went and got my degree and went to school and got my master's degree. And then I just started doing it. And the reason why I understand probably more psychology than or more about trauma and the neuropsychology of what happens in your brain when you've experienced trauma is because I was trying to understand myself. School doesn't teach you a lot of this. You've got to dig it out and learn it yourself. And so I was just trying to figure out, why do I feel so crazy? Why do I feel like other people seem to handle life well, but I don't? And so I read more about it and just came to more and more understanding about it. And that really helps me to be able to have more compassion and more empathy, which creates more patience for people who are experiencing trauma, because it does require a lot of patience. It requires you to not walk around with a chip on your shoulder. You can't take anything personally. You've always got to take a step back and say, what else is going on? If you're feeling offended or hurt or sad by someone else who's experienced trauma, taking a step back and thinking, what else could be happening here? Right.
Yeah.
And you'll be amazed that it has nothing to do with you, their attitude, the way they're coming off. It has to do with some deep, horrible, awful, painful experience from their past. Right.
Yeah.
So I could choose to react and say, how dare you disrespect me? I work hard all day here for you. I work my butt off trying to raise money for this place. And you just walk in here ordering me around. Or I could sit back, take a deep breath and ask open-ended questions and find out what's really happening. And then the healing that can take place from that is amazing.
Yeah.
So, and we need to do it with everyone in our life, right? Because everyone's walking around with trauma. That's really...
So, yeah. That's my next question. I've been in this work for a while now. Obviously, you have too. And so, in the anti-trafficking culture, so to speak, like everybody talks about trauma, and even I think more broadly in culture, people are more generally aware of trauma, and it's one of those things that, like, there's certain things that when they're familiar enough and you say the word, people give. I just call it the knowing nod. You say trauma, and people are like, oh yeah, trauma.
Yeah.
But we don't really, I think oftentimes, I know it's true for myself, like I know I should care about this and I know I should agree that this is important, but sometimes we don't really know all about it. So I want to ask you, can you say geek out about trauma? That's not the right expression. Can we just do a little bit of a 101 kind of riffing on trauma? Like, what is it? How does it work? Why is it so often, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but why is it something that we often misunderstand, or it's, one of those things like hiding in plain sight? We don't see that a person responding or reacting to me is a trauma response. Kind of wherever you want to go with that, but like can you like you talked about the neural pathways, and that there's some physiological realities associated with trauma. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Trauma really does change our brain. It's not a permanent change, but it does change our brain and the way that we react to the world around us. And because of that, we are constantly reacting in a fight, flight, or freeze or fawn mode. And that would be our amygdala that's in our brain. It's like your fire alarm. Your amygdala is a very good part. It's near the hippocampus and it's small. And what it does is alert you when there's danger, right?
So what are the four things again? Fight,
flight, freeze, or fawn. Yeah. So those are the four reactions that we're going to have to things when we feel threatened. Now, when you experience trauma, there's going to be things that remind you of that trauma. And that when your brain is reminded of that, it feels threatened. And so your amygdala turns on and it says, what do I need to do to protect myself? So it could be maybe you're a rape survivor and there's a certain smell that comes across and it reminds you of that rape. your body will instantly go into protective mode because your body's always trying to stay alive and not get hurt. That's
And
its main
this
goal.
is not conscious
Right.
necessarily.
It's not conscious necessarily. You can recognize it if you understand what's happening to you, which is
Okay.
why it's important to understand trauma. But if you don't understand, you're reacting and you don't know why. And you may just think it's the other person's fault. You don't even know it's associated to a rape per se. So your body is going to either want to run away to protect itself. I smell the smell. I know what happened last time I smelled the smell, or I'm going to fight and I'm going to get very angry. So there's these different things that will happen to protect yourself. The problem is that you can't go through life living like that, because just because you smell that same smell somewhere else doesn't mean you're being raped, doesn't mean you're in danger, but your brain doesn't know that. So it associates different things with the trauma. And so we walk around in this heightened state of survival, trying to survive, especially if you have complex trauma, which is complex PTSD compared to PTSD. PTSD is one incident, one time, horrific happened. It could be a child died. It could be a car wreck you were in. It could be, I got punched in the face by somebody, whatever that one incident is. Complex PTSD comes from multiple repetitive incidences, right? Mm-hmm. So over and over and over again, I'm being hurt constantly over a long period of time. And so that's where complex PTSD comes in. So if you think about, like if there's a bear in front of you, like you're hiking or something, and immediately when you see that bear, your amygdala takes over your body. It fills it with cortisol and adrenaline, because you need that to save your life. And your amygdala is not thinking, what is the best way to escape the bear? It's not. It just knows what it needs to do. So if you sat there and thought, should I run? Should I play dead? Should I go hide somewhere? I mean, so you would be eaten.
Yeah.
By the time you figure out an answer. So your amygdala just takes over and it fills your body with something. The idea comes immediately and you do it and you save your life. When you are continually experiencing trauma over and over and over again, like a trafficking survivor, or like maybe if you're in war, you are constantly, your amygdala is taking over and making the decisions. And so that we call that survival mode. I'm constantly reacting to everything in my life. I can't think logically. I can't access my wise mind, which is a combination of logic and emotions together that make a good decision. You're just stuck in your emotions. So your emotions are making all the decisions.
Can you say a little bit more about the freeze or fawn, the last two in that? Yeah. How does that play out?
Yeah. So, I mean, just freezing just means like I'm just frozen. I don't know what to do. I can't think. I can't move. It's kind of like when a possum plays dead, right? You just freeze. So, you pretend like you're not there. You disassociate. Fawning would be just going along, trying to get along, trying to keep the peace. And so we do these different things.
Trying to make friends with the bear, in other words.
Yeah. Like, here, I got some food. You don't want me. I don't taste good. But so it's just a different things that your body will do, or maybe it's one thing that your body regularly does. I like to say most of the time I ran, right? I was a teenage runaway. I would run away all the time from danger. But then I also had a lot of moments where I disassociated, which is more of a freeze response. I couldn't function. I couldn't remember things. And it was like I was awake and I was present, but I wasn't. My brain wasn't present because I was so scared. So something would trigger me and I would just disassociate into another world. So we do these different things to protect ourselves. And the problem is that we're not always in danger. And our brain doesn't always know that. It associates sights and smells and touch to the trauma you experienced, and then we react, which is why survivors cannot get out of it. Because if I'm constantly reacting and thinking every person that looks at me is going to rape me, sell me, shoot me with drugs, buy me, right? And that's not the case with every single person. But if I live my life like that, I can't function in society because I'm constantly running.
Yeah. Is it reasonable to say that trauma is a present tense, real time reality, even if there isn't an actual threat? It's always happening to us. You're always in that trauma response state, right? I think I've learned that.
Anytime something reminds you of your trauma, you're going to go instantly to that. And it could be a lot of things. It could be all the time. You learn to distrust everyone. If you think about it, people who buy people come from all walks of life. So now I'm going to be suspicious of everybody, right?
Everybody. Yeah.
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 And so this is what's being done to folks that are being bought and sold in the commercial sex ecosystem.
Yeah.
This is the outcome. I think this is the thing that a lot of people just don't realize, that unless these folks can find their way to a place like Magdalen House, the chances of that trauma and all of the responses being resolved are much, much lower.
Right.
It's going to
It
take
is
a lot.
much
Yeah.
lower. You'd have to have some pretty good resilience somehow instilled in you beforehand to be able to bounce back quicker or even on your own. Some people do,
Yeah.
but very, very few, right? And so
Yeah.
the key is, how do you instill resiliency in someone? How do we instill it in our children so that if something does bad happen to them, because something will, something bad happens, we can all think of something bad that happened to us in our life,
Yeah.
but we want people to bounce back quickly from that, right? And that's where resiliency comes in.
Mhm.
So we're trying to do that to the women here, is how do we help them be more resilient so that if they are stuck in a bad situation again, or there's a death in the family, it can be anything that can set you down and put you under and ruin your life, right? If you can't bounce back from it.
Yeah.
So how do we bounce back from things? And that's really important. People ask me all the time, like, how did you get to where you are? Because I am a completely different person than I was when I was younger. And I've often thought about, where did I get my resiliency? Because I wasn't doing too bad before counseling. Like emotionally, I was a wreck, but I wasn't on the streets. I wasn't stuck with my trafficker. I wasn't indulging in drugs and alcohol because I was addicted more to running and exercising than alcohol, right? I still had some addictions, but it's nothing that's going to get me thrown in jail, So
Right.
I'm very, very lucky, because not every woman ends up that way after trafficking,
Yeah.
I was still miserable. I still wanted to die. I still wanted to kill myself. But what got me to this point, honestly, I'm not real positive on what it is. I can remember like my first grade teacher telling me that she would like pinch my cheeks really hard and look in my eyes and get on my level and say, "You're such a good little girl." And I've always remembered that. And I probably would have never heard her say that if she didn't pinch my cheeks, because I was disassociating, because I was being trafficked, starting as a little kid in elementary school. And I just was never present in class. I was there physically, but emotionally and mentally, I was not there. And so because she pinched my cheeks, it kind of woke me out of that disassociative state. And I was able to hear those words. And I always kept them with me, because I wanted to be good. I wanted someone to love me, And so that always stuck with me. Is that where my resiliency came from? I mean, I kind of got a lot of it. So I don't know if that, I don't really remember anything else good happening to me except for that.
That's such a fascinating picture, though, because by doing that, and I'm not sure she wouldn't have gotten in trouble these days doing it, but that kind of crossed the barrier between emotion and the physical world, and just by triggering that physical response. Do you think she knew what she was doing?
Often wondered. I remember her being a lot older. Like, to me in first grade, she seemed like she was 80.
They all are. They all are.
I know, right? I often wonder if she knew what she was doing, because I would never have heard those words if she didn't pinch my cheeks. There's no way. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And that speaks to the how deep and profound trauma is, because it's at that intersection of our bodies, our emotions, our memories, our thinking. It's like, it's right in the middle of all of that trauma affects it. I've heard you share parts of your story before, but you were labeled, this may be later in your childhood, but you were labeled as damaged, problem child. Like, why do you think people didn't see the trauma, or why don't they see it? Because I know that pattern persists.
People are very quick to judge and say that's a bad kid.
Yeah.
And no kid ever grows up wanting to be bad, be on the streets, run the streets, deal drugs, have guns, whatever they do. They don't start out that way, right? Something happens along the continuum that, for whatever reason, that's ends up what's happening. And that's where I think society as a whole, where we struggle, is looking beneath the surface of what's really going on. When I train law enforcement here in Austin, I say, no, there's a reason why a kid is running away from home. And instead of saying, oh, with me, they used to say, oh, she just doesn't want to obey the rules. She just wants to be rebellious. No, I didn't. I was looking for love. I was looking for someone to care about me, for someone to not call me names, for someone not to say you're going to be nothing in your life.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for, because I wasn't getting it home. So ask questions, what's going on? Why are you leaving home? What's there that you don't want to be around? As you build rapport, they may start trusting you with that information. They may not trust you with it right away. A lot of us have to be tough on the streets. We have to have a hard exterior. We don't know if you're going to try and hurt us or not, and so we may be rude. We may say cuss words. We're going to dress inappropriately because we're looking for love and affection and attention. And we don't know any other way to get it, because the only way that we have received it, which is a false sense of love and security, is through what our bodies can offer people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of those things that manifests in so many different ways. The trauma. I've read a number of books by survivors. To sit and read or to hear someone share their story is a very privileged position.
Hey, Masculine Wilderness Podcast listeners, this is Lauren, your producer. If you found value in our show, we've got an epic opportunity for you. Become an epic ally today and join our fight against human trafficking. Your monthly support not only keeps this podcast going, but also fuels our mission to protect the vulnerable and combat exploitation. For less than one coffee a week, you can make a real difference. Head on over to epicproject.org and choose an amount that works for you. Even $13 a month can change lives. By becoming an epic ally, you're not just supporting the podcast, you're joining a movement. Stand with us. Let's make an impact together. Thank you.
Your book, the first one, and we can talk more about all of it, but your first one is called What Happened to Me.
Yeah.
But what struck me about that work that you did is that it was there's a little more than just you telling your story.
Yes.
You kind of stepped into the role of the guide, sort of the wizard character who's going to help someone else understand what's going on in their world.
Yeah.
Why did you take that approach? Is it just the innate kind of therapist in you, or?
There's a few reasons. So for years, I've wanted to write my story. And the problem, I kept struggling with putting it on paper because of disassociation. I have so many blank spots in my own story that I don't remember because of disassociation, that I couldn't piece it together. I couldn't tell a story that flowed really well. I was a freaking master at that and running away. Those are my two things, running away and disassociating.
Superpowers.
Yeah. And it's amazing how my brain remembered things. And then when I got like my police report as a kid, how it said different things. And it was fascinating. And it taught me so much about what the brain does to protect yourself from trauma. And it wasn't the incidents that happened, but it was actually the time, how long it happened, the order that it happened. It was fascinating to me because I remember what sparked me to go get my own police records was having an argument with my husband, because he knew me when I was being trafficked at 15 years old. And I went missing and he didn't know where I was. And I thought I was only missing for a couple of days. And we just started talking about it one night. And I was like, yeah, those couple of days I went missing and you were looking for me. And he's like, what do you mean? You were gone for like 2 weeks at least. I was like, no, I wasn't. It was only a couple of days. He's like, no, you were gone for at least 2 weeks. So then I thought, I wonder if I can get my police report, because it would show me that I could prove it was only a couple of days. So sure enough, I did. Contacted the police department in Arizona. I think it was Mesa, Arizona. And they mailed me all the police reports. And it was 21 days. Wow. I was missing for 21 days. But my brain only, I don't know, it just put it all into 2 days.
You should compress it into one short little memory.
But and that's what another thing, why did my brain remember it that way? But that's what actually disassociation does, because what happens is that when you're experiencing trauma, your hippocampus literally shrinks. It can shrink as much as 8%. And all of the energy in your body leaves the hippocampus and other places to go to your amygdala to save your life. Well, to save your life, you don't need to remember what the person's wearing, how long you were gone, what time it was. That is not important information to run from a bear, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to survive while you're in the grasp of a bear, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so it started helping me understand. I literally thought I was stupid because I couldn't remember nothing. I thought I'm the dumbest person out there. And it helped me with my self-esteem though, because now I know I'm not dumb. It's actually a thing to not
Yeah.
remember some of your trauma, you know?
Well,
And so,
yeah, it's
yeah,
self-preservation at some level,
yeah,
right? I mean, if you
yeah,
had to face the scale of that, the depth of that trauma all the time, it would take everything you had just to deal
sure.
with it.
Yeah.
How does trauma, how is it healed?
Time,
Yeah.
relationships are very important.
What kind, a particular kind of relationships?
Just any kind, really. I mean, depends where you are, what stage you're on in your life. Like here at Magdalen House, we want as many volunteers. And we only have 6 women, but we have like 40 plus volunteers and people come and go. But the reason for that is we want every woman here to develop some type of relationship with another woman who's volunteering here and carry that outside with them at Magdalen House. And hopefully it turns into a friendship or maybe it turns into my next family, right? Because some
Yeah.
of them don't have families that they can ever go back to. So you have to heal in community. Because if I can't trust anyone, I've got to learn to trust someone. You need people in your life. There's statistics out there that say that if you don't have family or community, your likelihood of being homeless is increases dramatically. And I don't remember the percentage, and that makes sense. If I don't have someone to, let's say I can't pay rent for a month, or I need a place to sleep for a month while I get my next place, I'm literally on the streets, right? So we don't have family to help us in those times of need. We're one step away from being, homeless and sleeping on the street. And that leaves you vulnerable to all kinds of stuff, right? So you've got to have community. It's critical in the healing process.
I'm struck by that comment. You've got to have community. One of the things that we see over and over again at Epic in dealing with the men, with the demand that drives exploitation, and in dealing directly with active sex buyers. Honestly, it's a sad irony, but it's the same root issues: isolation, disconnection, not having community. So, and I think it's one of the most tragic things about this work is that you have women, people in general, lacking that element of healthy community and all that, and then you have another population of the buyers who have that same deficit, and they find each other.
Yeah.
And they compound all of the trauma, all of the heartache and the pain. It's just such a thing. But on the positive side, it's also such a common human need, and like we all know, maybe we don't do it as well as we can, but we all know what a healthy relationship feels like. It's
right. Yeah. And we have to learn it in all different types of relationships, which is actually what book is about, is going through, because I've seen how even in the healing process, how relationships can take you back when we don't know how to be in relationship. So you've got to learn how to be in relationship with people appropriately.
Yeah.
That is very important. And so in work, in friendships, relationship with myself as an individual, and in intimate romantic relationships, any of those things can ruin our lives if we don't know how to navigate those. And survivors of trafficking do not know how to navigate those relationships at all.
Is it coming out? Is it?
Yeah, I'm hoping by the beginning of the summer. I'll give myself that long.
Are you allowed to divulge the name of the new book?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of fiddling with the title a little bit.
Okay.
It's just, oh gosh, what is it? I got to try to remember it now. Healing in relation, or wait, oh no, I'm sorry. It's called the Freedom Code. So there's a code that I've woven through it, but I was thinking of the subtitle, Healing Relationships for Trafficking Survivors. So
that's great. Do you cover at all healthy non-romantic relationships between men and women?
Friendships? Well, it depends the setting, right? So if it's a work relationship or a family relationship, It's funny. Maybe it's going to take me longer now if I need a hit on how to have a relationship with a man, because I don't know if I really
Sorry,
believe it. There's got to be some boundaries there. Like, I mean, I guess we talked about that in friendship too. So,
yeah, well, I mean, this is, I guess, honestly, this is a little bit of my bias. I feel like part of the problem of this perpetual culture of exploitation is that, and I'm speaking obviously from the man side of it, but we being men, have been raised to see women as mates or threats.
yeah.
Or some subordinate, like a daughter or granddaughter, or niece, but we have not been, in general, we have not been taught that women can also be friends in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just exploring that just in the work that I've done. But I would tell you, in the 15 plus years I've been doing this work, I would not be here were it not for the genuine, healthy friendship of women in the survivor community. They have been, and it's as true as for the entire group of the ones that I know, they have become, they were, they were my inspiration. They were my instructors and guides, but they've also become my friends over the years in a really organic, natural way. And that's very different than how I was raised. Like, because I was raised to view women as potential mates or threats to be avoided. And like for me, my earlier career was in the evangelical church as a pastor, and that is just drilled home over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think we're from the same era, which is why that piece kind of went over my head, because I'm looking at male relationships in the workplace, right? Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that? How do you keep it appropriate? And male relationships in your family, especially if there was abuse in your family, right?
Yep.
And intimate relationships with men, but never really thought about it as a friend, because like you said, even though I don't go to evangelical church, I've been in them and a lot, and you're taught not to be friends with men.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I understand, and I used to teach some of that. Like, I understand the impulse behind it,
right?
The intention behind it.
Yeah.
But the outcome of that is actually the very thing we're trying to avoid, because we haven't learned how to look each other in the eye.
Yeah.
As a man and a woman who, if I put it in a theological lens, we both bear the image of God. And we are equal. We have not been taught how to engage with one another that way.
You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's ironic, if I look at 42 years of marriage, like most of the fights I've had with my wife is when I failed to look at it that way, that this is my equal.
Yeah.
This is, anyway, yeah. Well, sorry, I apologize ahead of time if I delayed the outcome of the book.
Yeah, no, to circle around about the first book, I wrote it. I finally was able to read it because I was teaching women, or write it because I was teaching women or young women, teenagers, and who are in prison, locked up. So we have not all states have this, but in Texas, we not only have juvenile detention, we also have prisons that kids are in. And so they're two separate things. And so they asked me as a survivor and a licensed counselor, they're like, maybe we need lived experience, but someone who has the knowledge, when it comes to psychology and counseling, work with these girls to help reduce the recidivism rate and also break that trauma bond that they have with their trafficker, right? And so as I'm working with them, they have such all different experiences. And the only literature at the time that was out there was about pimp trafficking. That was it. Nothing about familial trafficking or gang trafficking or things that kind of don't fit in that box of how people were trafficked. So it was really hard to bring them all together, which is why I wrote the book, because you can't heal from what you don't know. And if you're in denial that this was your trafficker's fault, right? And that you were coerced or manipulated into this or even forced and it's not your fault. If I don't believe that, then I have nothing to talk about. I've got nothing to heal. Everything's my fault, which is why it took me so long to even go through the healing process. I'm like, I did this to me. It's my responsible to pick it up by my bootstraps.
Right.
It's my fault. So I need to just get it together, right? And I did really well holding it together out in the open in front of people. And even though I was falling apart behind closed doors, but I did that for a long time and I didn't know there was anything to heal from. And so there's nothing to address. And so that was part of the problem, is that people don't understand what happened to them, how they ended up in this, that it wasn't their fault. Right. And so they're still tied to their trafficker and believing that they owe them, because, there's that gaslighting that happens. And we got to break all of that and help them realize what happened to them. And so that's why in my book, when I reached out to my survivor sisters who had also written their story saying, hey, can I use this paragraph about how you were groomed in this book? Because someone else might out there be able to relate to it, to their story, right? But you were trafficked by your family. Can I use this little section to show someone who experienced familial trafficking that it's not their fault, right? That this isn't how their life was supposed to be, and just help break that self-blame and shame that keeps you hidden, just like it keeps men hidden who buy women, right? That shame allows all this to perpetuate and grow and keep us down and keep us from growing, right? And so that's why I wrote the book, was for them to learn their experience. And then also being a counselor, I kind of had some bad counseling experiences when I started counseling. And so I wanted them to understand what happens when you do counseling and do some of these modalities that they want to use on you for trauma, and what it's going to feel like. And so they're prepared more to engage in that and be ready for it.
Yeah. Your book, like I said earlier, it stands out because it was more. I mean, there was narrative in it. They're obviously telling a story. It also had a feel, I almost said like textbook, but it's really not. It was what I liken it to is just my brain, but like, as a college football player, we got a playbook.
Yeah.
And everything that we were going to do was contained in that playbook. We didn't have to look at it every day, but we knew that the answers were in there. And so I felt like this was more of a playbook. You want to heal. Mm-hmm. Here's how to think about what's happened to you and how to move forward. And so it had that mentoring kind of guide or a guidebook, maybe is a better way to describe it.
I call it a psychoeducational book is what I call it. So, and I recently have rewritten it to kind of include more as I've done this work longer. So it's still called What Happened to Me. But
okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So it's What Happened to Me, A Survivor's Guide to Healing and Empowerment. So it's an expanded edition.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was looking, I have the first copy somewhere behind me and I couldn't find it. If I was organized, this would be like alphabetical, but it's not.
Yeah.
I want to just go back real quick to the trauma conversation and specifically, in what ways do you see men impacted by trauma in our culture? What do you see from your perspective in terms of how trauma affects men in our culture?
Yeah, I think men are expected a lot of times to not feel. And so they bottle those emotions up instead of getting it out, which I think it's more difficult for men to share what's happened to them. And so because they don't get that, they don't feel like they can do that because that's not a man or it's not masculine, it causes them to react to society in different ways and in ways that are not adaptive, in ways that might hurt other people. And that needs to change. I actually have had men who have cried in front of me and then try to dry up their tears saying, I'm so sorry, men, I'm not supposed to do that, And I'm like, no, you're human. You are supposed to do that. You're made just like me.
Yeah.
You look different and, there's different things about us, but, it's important that when men experience trauma, I think a lot of times they want to hold it in, pick it up by their bootstraps, not think about it, brush it aside, or they go alone because they don't want other people to see them upset or react. So they hide, whether it's just leave me alone and I go in my room, or I leave somewhere and go out. Which can also create addictions and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if it makes you hide and withdraw, it just reinforces that loneliness and isolation that leads to a whole chain reaction of trauma producing activity a lot of times.
Yes.
What lessons could men learn from the trauma of survivors of trafficking?
Let's see. What lessons could they learn from the trauma of survivors of trafficking? Well, I mean, that your actions can hurt other people. When you are not healed and you are reacting out of your own trauma, it hurts other people and it hurts survivors of trafficking if you're reacting in that way. And whether it's buying or exploiting, however you're partaking in that, and relationships with other people. But I don't know if I'm real sure what you mean by the question, so I'm trying to think.
Well, it comes from, it comes from my own personal experience. I have learned so much from um, working alongside and following the lead of survivors, hearing their stories.
Yeah.
I desire, I guess it's a personal desire. I want men to learn from the things that you have had to experience so that other generations of women and girls and boys and trans youth, so that there are fewer of these stories to tell. That's like
Yeah.
at a real personal level. But
Yeah. Well,
and
trauma,
maybe, yeah, go ahead.
it just affects every trafficking trauma, particularly. It affects every aspect of your body, your life, your soul, your mental, physical, spiritual. It's difficult to overcome, but not impossible. And, when you talk about, I don't know, how do we treat, we should always be thinking about how are we treating people? How are we approaching people? How are reactions affecting other people, and vice versa? I don't know. It's a kind of a hard question to ask, or not to ask, but to answer. I'm struggling with it.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I um, see men just seemingly chronically unaware of how they have been impacted by trauma and how that lack of self-awareness perpetuates trauma in the lives of other people. And so I'm always looking for ways to, to kind of short circuit
Yeah. I
that
guess
process.
I think I'm struggling with the question because we all have trauma and we all impact each other, and we
Yeah.
bounce off of each other like that, right? So I don't
Yeah.
want to necessarily blame it on men. I think everyone needs to look at themselves introspectively and not be afraid to see the ugliness inside of us. And if you
Mhm.
see it, then go get healing and get it fixed, because whether you're a man or a woman, you are impacting other people because of your trauma. Even the
Yeah.
women here at Magdalen House, the horrific trauma they have, when they lash out at other people and take it out, it hurts other people,
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's the same way with the men who've experienced trauma. However they're dealing with that, if they're dealing with it in a way that's not healthy and maladaptive for society and for other people, it is going to hurt them. And we will
Yeah.
continue to see society as a whole continue to just crumble because we are
Yeah.
all reacting off of our trauma. And what we need to do is, it's your responsibility. What happened to you is not your fault. So whatever's causing you to react in this way, right?
Yeah.
It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to get the healing. And you've got to do that for the sake of your family, for your kids, your grandkids, your community. It's the only way to really make the world a better place, is if we focus on us and what do we need to do so that we can come to the table as a stable, safe, supportive person,
Yeah. That's such a helpful clarification, and it's nuanced because what you're saying is you still, no matter what has happened to you, no matter the level of trauma, you still, as a human being, have agency.
Yes,
And
you
you
do.
have, now, some people need a lot more support in this,
Yes.
but it's just, yeah, as human beings, you have agency and the capacity to engage in the process of healing. We
Yeah.
all need help. Yeah, we all need help.
Yeah. People
So I
complain
think,
about the world and society, and I'm like, what are you doing about you? Because we
yeah,
can't control what everyone's doing, but I can control what I do by
yeah,
taking care of what's happened to me and get healing in that area. And I don't believe that it ever stops. That you should always be self-reflecting and looking at, what's next? What else can I do
mm,
better? How else can I heal better so that I can do better? Because doing better, I can try to do better, but I'm not going to do that well if I don't actually get healing from what happened to me.
yeah.
And so that's what's really important.
That's why these conversations are so helpful. I'm really grateful that we could, especially this last part, can kind of unpack this, because I'm learning from you as we're doing this, and I hope others can see that, like, the power of healed trauma is that it has healing potential for other people. Even just like it motivates me to go, okay, I need to deal with me,
Yeah.
and that's hard for men to hear.
Mm.
but it's not untrue, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to I want to give you the last word, but if I could, because it's my habit, I want to set up the scene for you. You've done a lot of speaking, and I've heard several of your presentations, so you're no stranger to that environment. So imagine a room with 500 men, not sex buyers, not cops, but men who care about creating a healthier, safer world where people can thrive, male allies in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your best advice to those men?
I have a couple of things.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. Number one, you can only help others as much as you've helped yourself. You've got to reflect on you and take care of you. And that means cleaning out your, whatever happened to you, getting healing from that, however you can. You are not going to be as productive as a healing and safe person as you may want to be if you don't have that within yourself first. Second is, and this is, can I do one more for fathers or?
Go for it. Yep.
Okay. I guess because as a female and being trafficked by my own father, and have experienced trafficking for me at the hands of men, because traffickers can also be women. We don't want to forget that. But being trafficked by men, I just never felt that love that I needed from a dad. And I always tell fathers that I know you love your kids. Most of you do. I'm assuming almost all of you do. And you show that through your hard work, and you're at work all day and you come home tired and you rest and you get up for the next day and you work, right? Because you want to provide for your family and your children. You want them to be proud of you. And that's why you do it, because you love them. But I want you to think about, do they know you love them? Do your kids know that? Because the kids see it from a different perspective. They see dad gone all day or mom gone all day. They're working hard and he doesn't care about me. He doesn't see me. So the question isn't, do you love your kids? The question is, do your kids know that you love them? And so I want you to focus on that, because our children grow up and some of them get hurt. Some of them are trafficked. Some of them are buyers, right? They're missing something in life. And so they seek out different things that lead them to situations that are very harmful. And a lot of times it's because of loneliness and just a lack of feeling they belong. And I think that starts at home, is really looking at our home environment and how can I help this be a better environment, a safe environment for me and my family. And it starts with you. And so that's why I always say, focus on you. What do you need to clean up? What are those deep, dark secrets that you have that you don't want to tell anyone, that you don't want anyone to know? Because that's coming out in different ways. And your intention is that I love and I care and I provide and I want to do good in the world. But people see you differently. They don't see you that way if you're not taking care of that. And so I just think overall, that we really need to focus on that to make things better in this world.
Toni McKinley, you are a wise and faithful guide, and I'm really grateful. So thanks for having this conversation today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on and giving me a chance to, share all of that. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.